Hello everyone, this is part 31 of What If Naruto was told about his Uzumaki genes early, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Kurotsuki-sama, a shinobi with a mask said, appearing inside the office. We have a situation. Kurotsuki frowned deeply. She didn't need to deal with any more crap than this. She needed to prepare for her talks with the Empire and sooner with Konoha playing the referee. She needed that to drag her village out of the shithole it found itself sinking in. Of course, the talks would not be easy, but at least she had been given the impression that it was not impossible to make the trouble go away. She just needed to swallow a bit of her pride to deal with the situation. What? Roshi and Han were captured by the Akatsuki. What? Kurotsuki demanded. Not long ago. Damn it. Kurotsuki cursed loudly before dismissing the shinobi. There was not going to be a mission to rescue them. She was not going to lose any more men. Kurotsuki leaned in on her chair, wearing an expressionless mask. What was happening here? The Emperor could not possibly have something to do with this. She had already received a message from both Suna and Konoha, but she hadn't responded to them. First of all, she'd thought the Kazekage was just weak. But the danger had occurred to her. The power of those two could not be underestimated. They meant nothing to the Emperor, but to other villages it was a major power that could deter people from making false moves against them. And now they were gone. According to Konoha's message, there was a greater threat at play. No doubt there, but she hadn't been willing to acknowledge it then. She had her reasons. In this situation, it was no longer about personal issues but the greater good of her village. Iwa was being threatened in this situation and she could not allow it. She could be fine with the Emperor being hunted down for his Bayou, but the fact remained it would only put the future of her village at greater risk. There were still questions that needed answers, but the path ahead was obvious. She could not decide anything else. Azushiogakur. Naruto was sitting behind his desk while clones sealed some of his things and his work. Karen watched this, standing at the entrance. He was really leaving Azu for his new home. Perhaps it was also a way to step away from the politics of the clan. Moving out of the village to have his seat in the Sound also meant taking away some power from it. It would not have as much influence as it would if the Emperor rested here. Then again, their clan politics would have probably drowned him from ever doing most of his work, and it would probably make him make some decisions he would not want to make about the clan. His love for his clan was unquestionable. But, if the clan was taking a direction he did not agree with and found it irrational, he would step on the throats of some people. Are you not going to help me? Naruto asked in a quiet tone. Karen shrugged and moved away from the door. She went to a shelf and scanned through the books before responding. You seem to be handling it well. Besides, who would help their husband move away from them? Those who want separation from their husband. Karen turned to face the Emperor. She had a small sad smile on her lips. Well, I don't want that, do I? I cannot answer that question. You have the answer, Naruto said, watching Karen carefully. She was apparently coming along these days. It was still something. The progress he could accept. We have had our fair number of issues, but things have not been that miserable. We had our fun moments, Karen said, fondly remembering the good days. That was before all the other women came and threatened her place. At least she thought that much. But she knew that no one could remove her from her place. Not when the clan had her, and Naruto still loved his clan. Ever since the others came, she had become bitter. And Naruto had not indulged her. He had responded with coldness. Not entirely my fault that things have changed. You chose to live differently. We had told you of what was to come, but you changed. My treatment of you has been only reactive, the Emperor said. He then smiled. But I must admit, the good days cannot be compared. He had never hated Karen. He had always enjoyed their moments. Her sharp response. She had not been overly dramatic then. She was strong. But now she had become this weak-willed woman who was overly emotional. Perhaps it was the stress of this life. But she had still been someone he could laugh with. When was the last time he had one of those moments with her, or with anyone else for that matter? He had been overly robotic over the last couple of years. The days with Jiraiya were light, even in Konoha. Perhaps he could act like that again to make things better. Relationships could be very fragile at times. Emotional attachments were based on trust and mutual understanding. The moment the trust was broken and the understanding became non-existent, everything changed. Do you think we will ever go back to those days? I don't believe in past glories. You are not inspiring any hope, Naruto. Then again, when it is convenient, you think hoping is irrational. Karen responded with a slight shake of her head. You are taking my words the wrong way. While I don't want to get stuck in past glories, I believe that we can make new memories, not relive the old ones. You can choose to compare, but that just drags you down. Everything is your choice. You choose whether you want to be happy or miserable. Says the person who can be very miserable. I have my issues, Naruto said with a shrug. He stopped talking, watching Karen walk toward the couches. She settled down peacefully and he continued talking. I will make arrangements on how I come here in the coming days. But no one must sit on my throne. Any person who does so will be tried. Including me. You are a person, no. Naruto responded calmly. Karen shook her head. It was not like people were allowed to stroll into the throne room in the first place. She didn't have to worry about having to dish out any punishment to anyone. I'd prefer it if you just came to me. I am your wife. It isn't like when you come, I'll be out seeing another man. The schedule will make everything predictable, and for romance, that would be dull. I thought you preferred such things. But not for my personal issues. I prefer to separate my work ethics from my personal life. The moment I start treating my life in the same manner as my work, everything becomes an experiment. Karen explained. She closed her eyes, trying to imagine that kind of life where everything was an experiment. Are you really going to be alone in there? I don't know. You are the only one I would want living with me. Karen stared at him with a raised eyebrow. I thought you'd say Temari or Kayuki. The latter seems to press the right buttons with you. But that may be because she is a perverted woman. Temari forces me to draw on emotions, and that is draining. I also fear that being truly close to her means that I may change. I don't want that to occur. Even the Emperor is afraid of change. But I guess if you change your heart, and become emotional, well, at least go to a point where you recognize other people's emotions because you care. Most things about the Empire would change, and it may or may not be as great as you want it to become. Karen knew that Naruto had to take some extreme decisions. Even in a peaceful world, tough decisions would need to be taken. Just because the nations were not actively fighting wars didn't mean that there were no evil people. Humans would always turn to the dark side of things. As long as people remained unique, there would be conflicts, there would be criminals, and there would be a need for dark arts against such people. It isn't necessarily change that I am against. People change, for the best or worst. That is the process of life. We are all go through different phases in our lives. What I don't want is growing too attached that the attachment stops me from doing what I must do as the Emperor. Naruto said. Karen was silent for a couple of moments. She really didn't think there was a time that was going to come where Naruto would fail to do what he needed to do. He had programmed his mind to operate in a certain way. Some of the things were not things that he had to sit and plot, but it was simply an instinct for him to react in such manner. I don't think you need to worry about that, but then again, you never know anything about life. The heart is a mysterious thing. You can never really predict how it will react to all situations. I thought I was going to be fine with you marrying multiple women. Even though I knew this, and had been prepared for it, when it started becoming a reality, I became angry. The reasons I understand, but the emotions overwhelmed reason and I lashed out. This was something that Naruto wanted to think would never happen again. He didn't want to end up dealing with the same thing over and over again. He had his patience. You seem to be coming along just fine. Yeah. There was bitterness in Karen's tone as she responded. This is only after being grounded like a child and then held hostage by my husband. Some people learn through experience and some through pain. Naruto said with indifference. You know I'm not going to hold what you did over your head for the rest of your life. Not unless the same thing happens again. I'm not planning on getting pregnant again. After this one, I wish to rest a bit and allow this one that is still forming to grow. I don't want two brats crying for me. This is your child, not mine. We will have mine when I want. We will do that if you can carry the child. If I have to carry it, you can lock me up in prison and it is still not going to happen unless I am ready. Karen responded in a sharp tone. Naruto only smiled hearing those words. Welcome back, Karen. The atmosphere within the sound was truly different from the one in Uzumaki. The compound was separated from the rest of the village, but here, it was not. Naruto felt that he was within the large city he had built. He could feel it. The many empty buildings. The many men and women running around carrying materials to furnish the buildings that they had built. The center compound was built with 3 floors. The top floor was reserved for him and Haku. It was made as their living quarters. Haku would still work at the tower Gurren had built. The second floor was left for the imperial workers who would be handling administrative duties. The ground floor housed the throne room. It was located at the heart of the compound. The other 4 buildings were majestically built. And of course, the walls had the paint of crimson. Not all of them, but just part of them. Naruto was standing at the entrance. It was a small gate, with wooden walls stretching after them. A single guard stood at the entrance. He wore a dark crimson long cloak, a forehead protector with the letter E written on it. He had already said his greetings and expressed happiness that the emperor was coming home. He had simply taken it all with just a nod of his head. From the entrance, there was a clear path that leads straight to the large crimson doors of the center building. Trees were planted in between the buildings. A man-made stream of water ran around the center building, with multiple small bridges built for people to walk through them to enter the building. The road was paved, with trees lining up toward the main building. Aside from the large crimson door that led to the throne room, there was another door that was left open. It was the main entrance to the building. Naruto did not go through it but went through the throne room. It was built from the underground to create more space. The hall was huge, with 3 crystal pillars on the left and 3 on the right supporting the dark blue crystal ceiling. They all carried the Empire's flag. The entire ceiling was purely crystal. It had a certain glow about it that created some light colors within the throne room. The stairs leading to the throne were covered by a crimson mat. The throne was a gigantic thing with its back touching the ceiling. It was dark blue, with the back painted red. Naruto settled gracefully and leaned against it. It was comfortable. He closed his eyes. The moment he did so, he felt chakra signatures flashing in one by one. When it all stopped, his eyes opened. Gurren was on one knee, about 70 masked shinobi in crimson cloaks lined up in rows of 5 kneeling behind her. The doors slowly opened, and Haku walked in, with Yugao behind him. He marched between the gathered shinobi and stopped beside Gurren, but did not kneel. Yugao felt compelled to kneel beside Gurren. Welcome home, Your Majesty. We hope that this is to your satisfaction. Haku greeted with a small smile on his lips. But there was a bit of steel in his tone. Naruto did not offer an immediate response as he searched the men behind Gurren one by one. After a couple of moments, he finally spoke. I have no complaints. Whoever designed the throne did well. It is rather comfortable and stands tall above all other things. I like it. It was the work of Gurren, Your Majesty. Haku said. I see she has also prepared fine shinobi. I can feel their chakra. Gurren, you may arise and address your emperor. Protocols were in place. Haku had demanded that they be in place. Naruto didn't complain. It was time to play his role as emperor with all the necessities that came with it. Thank you, Your Majesty. Gurren said as she stood up. She was honestly happy that Naruto liked the throne she had created for him. She was also happy that he was finally moving to this place to make it his home. How could she complain? Her emperor was coming here. Once more, she was going to be working close to him. Any subject would relish working close to her master. It was also pleasant that the master she now served was fair and not a cruel bastard who could never compliment anyone unless it was for the sole purpose of trying to win support and continued loyalty. I selected these men to be the police of the city. It will be their duty to patrol and guard the city against any threat. They will have their own supply of intelligence and working stations that is different from other forces. I have developed a system that ensures that they execute the duties without any interference. I understand that politics will play around this city, and as such many people of influence may take residence. When you have such people, they will like to have control over those in charge of protecting the city. Their only limit is when it comes to the Imperial Guard. The Imperial Guard will be the one responsible for your protection, along with Haku's and any other leader who comes to the city. Naruto nodded. The Imperial Guard would still need some work. Uzumaki will play an important role in the guard. He could leave its command over to Naori, his prime guard. Haku could also give them orders as his right hand. Expand the scope of work to the entire country, the Emperor said. And of other forces. We are still in the process of recruiting and doing training. Gurren answered. I remain in command of all other forces. But I won't be in charge of the police. We believed it would be best if they only reported to the one who controls the city. Naruto tilted his head to the side and closed his eyes. One who controls this city and one who controls this country is the same person. Haku, you have so many duties and cannot do all things. Gurren, I will have Yukimaru trained to become leader of this country. But he shall be succeeded by your child, if he does remain alive to that point, at least. Of course, your majesty. Gurren said. She was at least happy that something like that was going to come to pass. But, she knew that the one who would control this country would always play second to the one who controlled this city. All power of the country would rest with Haku and the Emperor. But, she was not complaining about it. Do you have a training ground prepared for me? Yes, it is just outside of the city. I had Noroi erect a barrier around the area to close it away from public eyes. The city itself has more than 17 training grounds. We have managed to keep the closed to public eyes as well. These men behind you, 4 p.m. today, they must be on my training ground, ready to battle me with the intention to kill me. I am so far impressed with their chakra, but if they cannot show me that they are worthy of protecting my country, you'll get rid of them and recruit new people. A test from the Emperor. I will ready them. Gurren said. Good. We will have proper introductions then. For now, they are dismissed. Gurren motioned for the men to take their leave and they disappeared in a flash. Yugao was the only one who remained on her knee. She didn't get up, but just stared at the Emperor. He hadn't given her a look since she arrived with Haku, but she was not going to speak when not offered the opportunity to do so. Are there any issues you brought with you? This city might come under attack from the Akatsuki looking for the Sanbi and me. He knew that. He was the key to all that, and for Madara to get to it, he would need to get to him. With how things are happening, it was apparent that some members of the Akatsuki would come to him for that battle. It was not that the Sanbi was here, but he knew where it was. Haku frowned. You are putting this city in danger just like that. Naruto shook his head. Deidara and Sasori are the only ones who can damage to it. But they will not come here because Noroi has given me their location, and tomorrow, I am going to hunt him down. I also won't wait for Madara to come here for me to battle him. This minimizes the risk to everything we have built. I still don't like it. You are the Emperor and there is no other place you can go. We cannot expel you from your own home. Just so you know, we don't have money for anything else. We actually owe some of the builders. I've had to borrow money to patch up some things. Haku said. How much did you borrow? 350 million ryo. It was for the completion of the hospital and equipment as well as some for the trains. Naruto was silent for a couple of moments before speaking. What about the money from Yoshino's schemes? It wasn't enough and it isn't coming in large sums, Haku said. I didn't want to damage the wave or request aid from other nations within the empire because I didn't want to burden them. The wave had its own situation and Am is spending in building its trains. Not to mention that due to its closed doors, it was not exactly rich. But, the wave has reserves. Indeed. Haku didn't deny this. We owe a lot of money and will need to borrow more to build the trains. Naruto said with a shake of his head. Consult Tazuna and half the wave's reserves. Use the money coming from the mines, and business Yoshino took over to start servicing our debt. Kurotsuki has still not paid up, has she? Haku shook his head. But, I have been in contact with the Earth Daimyo about the transfer of 100 million ryo. Naruto tapped his fingers on the throne for a couple of moments before speaking. Deidara and Sasori have large bounties on their heads. We can cover this new debt you made. Kisame has another. There is also Kakazu, his is rather big. We will make ourselves rich by turning over their heads, that should solve the problems we have, no. But you must get them first before the other nations. Tomorrow, I will pick up Deidara and Sasori, we can move quickly to get the others. I have to say, I'm a little surprised that you haven't said anything to argue against this. I am thinking about profiting from the death of the people, Naruto said, staring straight at Haku. Haku shrugged lightly. Some things had to be done. He knew he was kind and that Naruto held back from telling him some things because he knew he would object. But, the more he was exposed to the line of work, the more he realized that certain people could not be moved with just mere words. They are criminals who have murdered many. If the deaths can bring fortune to us, I cannot complain. Haku said, I am only against the death of innocent people. They are not innocent, but I won't say they deserve it. Naruto smiled. I think you are just being stubborn there, he said and then turned to face Gurren. You teaching him the value of working hard. He is learning through the job. Being a leader exposes you to all kinds of things. When he was still with Zabuza, he could leave the killing to his master. And with you, even when faced with difficulty, we handled it. But when he was alone here, there was no other choice but to act. He has been saying you don't need to know everything, and that teaches him some things. Naruto was silent for about a minute. I don't need to know everything, huh? What don't I need to know? You mean the fact that it was not Haku who borrowed money but you and from business people who then threatened to take this place hostage? And because of politics, you could not simply kill him to erase it. Gurren turned to Haku who simply shook his head to say he didn't say anything. She turned back to the Emperor. His expression was unreadable. She could not tell if he was angry with her or not. Such things, she ended up saying. Naruto nodded. As long as the end solves all things. We needed the money to move things. But we shall cover gaps with bounty. I'm certain Kakazu also has a cave where he hides all his money. I know he hunts down shinobi and people with large bounties. What does he do with all that money? Gurren grinned just thinking about a large stack of money hidden somewhere. It was plausible that the man did have somewhere he hid his money. We'd have budget to play around with things, she said grinning. I can pay my people well for their work. Naruto nodded. He would need to be extra careful tomorrow but straight to the point. He would not need to fool around. He would jump to the throat the moment the battle begins. You can stand, Yugao. Naruto instructed. What is her role? She will serve directly under me. Haku said. You don't have a problem with me changing her position, do you? I don't have someone I can trust to work for me and she is skilled. You did say we can trust her. I still wonder about that. Naruto adopted a thoughtful look. You know I am not that kind of a person. Yugao said to Naruto with a straight face. You've known me for years now. Naruto did not address this. In fact, he just acted as if he hadn't heard her speak. She can stay with you, we will talk later Haku. He turned to Gurren. You may approach the throne. Gurren did not move, not until Haku and Yugao started retreating. She didn't know why the Emperor was calling her closer. She felt slightly nervous as she walked up the stairs. Her heartbeat was a little faster, but she managed to keep all emotions off her face. You need not be so nervous, I'm not thinking of punishing for anything. But we must talk about you and Haku. The following day, Deidara grinned when he saw the Emperor sitting on a small rock, facing the sky. He could not help smile. There was no other reason for the Emperor to appear before them in this manner. It was for battle and Deidara was ready for it. It didn't matter if it was the Emperor. He had been itching for this day. Zetsu had said that this day would come and here it was. He knew Naruto was powerful and it was probably going to take both him and Sasori to take him down. He would not dare underestimate this man. Still, his excitement began to build quickly seeing the man. He didn't usually get to fight such a powerful opponent. So the day has finally come for you to come before us. I'd always known that we would have to face you one day. Sasori said. Naruto turned to face the two Akatsuki nins with an expressionless mask. Perhaps Sasori would pose a bit of a challenge but Deidara was not known for being the quickest shinobi out there. Naruto had plenty in his arsenal to decide how to go about this battle. He just needed to chop their heads off and take them to collect the bounty and he would then go home and get some sleep. Maybe he could even summon Mei to his chambers as a way to celebrate collecting the massive bounty on these two. You have always been special, Sasori. What I also admired about you was your effective spy network. You planted sleeper agents all over the elemental nations and I had admired that work. I opted against utilizing it because I knew if I liked it, I'd find getting rid of you irrational. The Emperor stated while still sitting calmly. Praise from the Emperor, I will take it. Let us just do this, HN. Deodara said, balling his fists. His body grew tense when Naruto suddenly flashed in front of him along a small breeze. He hadn't sensed anything nor seen anything. He just blinked and the Emperor was gone. He realized that the air was strong around the Emperor. His eyes were also different. He was surrounded by wind. Was this what they called a wind armor? Did it increase the speed in such a way? Are you sure you want to get this done quickly? Your only way of fighting is through your so-called art. You are not that quick, neither is Sasori in that form. This means that I can cut both your hands before you even do anything. It is honestly disappointing that S-rank shinobi can be lacking in such a manner. Deodara smirked. You are serious, HN? He said. If the Emperor wanted to cut him that easily, he would have swung his sword already. Don't do anything suicidal, I'll just defuse it. The Emperor said before shifting slightly and then moving towards Deodara's left side. He placed his hand on the man's shoulder and then spoke once more. Next time, I will simply cut you. Be ready. Deodara didn't have the time nor the energy to do anything when Naruto's fingers dug into his shoulder and with just one hand, even when he tried to resist, the blonde pulled him, and twisted around in the blink of an eye before hurling him towards another direction. While airborne, Deodara fought to control his body, gritting his teeth for a moment. That was just ridiculous. The raw strength was just inhuman. You think you got me? He then grinned, shouting loudly. Art is a blast, Katsu. Naruto's eyes shifted down and he saw two small white birds dropping down. They were just below the height of his knees. A burst of lightning occurred, and the clay was turned into ashes. Shit. Deodara cursed loudly. This was his worst enemy. Fighting someone who manipulated lightning which his element was weak against meant that he could not ignite his art. About 20 needles were shot towards Naruto by Sasori. They flew toward him from the right side, heading towards him. Naruto simply waved his right hand and then released a powerful gust of wind. The gust slammed into the needles, deflecting their path. Are you two really serious about this? You won't be alive in the next couple of seconds if this continues, Naruto said while taking out a kunai. He coated it with wind chakra and then flung it towards Sasori. Naruto was using wind, and with the speed of the kunai, there was no doubt that the kunai was coated with wind. If he let the kunai hit, it was going to burst through his puppet. His metal tail swept from behind, the blade of the tail shifting to the sides as the kunai neared him. Within a second, metal clashed when the kunai hit his blade and was deflected to the side. If he had natural eyes, Sasori would have widened his eyes when the Emperor suddenly appeared in front of him in a crouched position. He was indeed too damn fast. Once more, he hadn't seen anything. It was like the wind was surrounding him. Hikari's mouth flung open as he tried to release poison needles, but before a single needle could even leave, the Emperor shoved a ball of flames inside Hikari's mouth before flashing away. Boom. Sasori knew it was over for Hikari when the ball of flames touched his cloak. The Emperor was known for creating condensed ball of flames that were capable of making huge explosions. Even though he was not looking at Deodara, Naruto was watching him. He didn't seem to be at all concerned about Sasori. Naruto did know that the blast he released was not enough to defeat someone like Sasori. Seconds later, something jumped out of the flames. Naruto stared at Sasori with a raised eyebrow. Sasori should be much older. Looking at him, Naruto realized that he was not looking at blood and flesh but something else. I see, he commented without saying anything in particular. Had anyone else destroyed Hikari? Deodara could not remember, and this man had done it within seconds of starting a battle with them. This was going to be a dangerous battle. He was also problematic since he could not use some of his abilities because he didn't want to end up killing him. The blonde was a Jinchuriki and death was not to come to him or unless he would be held responsible for the death of the Kyuubi. This looks like it is going to be difficult. Sasori said to him from the other side. Be careful that I don't get caught in your explosives. Art. Deodara corrected. But don't worry. Whoever's art takes him down proves that their art is superior and the real art. Naruto spoke before Sasori could respond. I heard that you two often have this debate. But I'm afraid we won't get to see that. I didn't come to fool around with you both here. If I had the Sharingan, I would have just engulfed you in black flames, but I am Uzumaki, so I used a seal. He said while looking at Deidara through the corner of his eyes. Deidara was not stupid. He clearly read what the Emperor was saying. He didn't say he would use a seal but had already used a seal. But he hadn't seen him applying one on him. This made him tense. Naruto turned to face Deidara, and held up his right hand. There were strange marks on his palm. Most of my seals are stored here. I use my chakra to imprint them on targets. It is sort of how my father could mark you with one of his seals for his jutsu. I can do that, but I choose not to because there would be no fun in that. He smiled. Can you guess what I did, do you? You won't feel the effects now because I haven't activated it. Deidara frowned deeply. That moment the man touched him on the right shoulder. Naruto had targeted the hand he used. This was not anywhere in the information they had about the blonde. How was he going to deal with this? He could be. His thoughts came to a halt when he felt like a hand was gripping him on his right shoulder. He quickly tore off his cloak to see what was happening. Black marks started to spread around his shoulder through his arm. He gritted his teeth when he started feeling a tightening of his muscles. When he tried to move, nothing moved. His brain leapt, shouting the commands, but the muscles failed to react. Nothing in his body was moving. He could not move his neck. His eyelids couldn't even blink. Everything was just stiff. Grr! Deidara cried. It was only the voice that came through gritted teeth. He wanted to move, but his jaws refused to clench. Silver rods protruded from his shoulder. There were 6 of them, and they were conducting electricity. He knew, it was his chakra being turned into lightning. The lightning kept him paralyzed as it was going through his body. But this could not go on forever. He would run out of chakra. And when that happens, he was going to die. He couldn't glare at the Emperor. He could do nothing. He felt frustrated, helpless. Anger bubbled within his thoughts. But he could now no longer even cry. Stay there for a little while because I want to deal with Sasori. I imagine by the time I am done with him, your chakra will have been drained already. Sasori was not pleased about this, but he was not going to risk anything. It was likely that if he neared, those rods would discharge electricity, electrifying anything close to him. That is some complex work. He ended up saying in a calm tone. Nothing compared to the many seals that I have developed over the years. Naruto responded as he turned to face Sasori. Don't worry, I won't do any on you. You have plenty of puppets that will make it difficult for me to get near you to reply anything. Oops, I just shared a secret. Oh well, it isn't like it changes anything. Azushiogakur. The throne room was not a public place that allowed people entry. But, there had been times the Emperor called people here. There were those, leaders, in the streets for civilian matters. It was the only chance common people found the ear of the Emperor. When he was on the throne, he was a different person. Of course, it all depended on the mood. Miyuki had seen the man looking pleasant, creating an atmosphere that permitted normal people to be around him freely. Naturally, there was always a shadow behind him, giving a warning sign. Perhaps it was only visible to her perceptive eyes. For some reason, Miyuki could tell the throne room was completely empty of the people who usually listened in when the Emperor was talking to some people. With Haku away, it was just cold. As she moved closer to the throne, Miyuki felt like she was stepping closer towards the King of Hell. He had an imposing look. The atmosphere was just pregnant with violent tension. Even when she felt that, Miyuki didn't change the expression on her face. She continued smiling. Your Majesty. She greeted the man on the throne. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Is that how you address the Emperor, Miyuki? They were going to do this. She knew there was danger here. But, she also knew she was going to get out alive. The moment Naori came to tell her that the Emperor wished to see her without wasting time, she had known there was something wrong. Apologies, Your Majesty. It is a habit since I usually stand. Miyuki said as she knelt down. Was this part of the humiliation? Being forced to be like this? Women were usually allowed to remain standing. All that was expected from them was to face the floor as they speak unless commanded to face the Emperor. I think you read the mood a lot better than that, Miyuki, Naruto said. His expression changed slightly. We have not spoken in private in quite some time. Not since the day we first met. Indeed. I'd always thought that you were avoiding me. Our conversation that day had gone so well. Naruto smiled. I will not disagree with anything you said. I tend to avoid dealing with a woman who can manage to convince me to do certain things that I would rather not do. You also seem to hold your liquor far better than most people. It isn't like you easily get drunk. But, I don't remember trying to convince you to do something you wished not to do. I was merely curious why the Emperor would be sitting in a bar alone with a miserable looking face. Thinking of those days, Naruto truly missed them. He missed that peace. There was always chaos in a bar, especially at night. People lost it easily when drunk. Chairs could be thrown around. Bottles could find themselves breaking in someone's face. The bar life was like that. He'd always found it peaceful to be still in a place where there was nothing but chaos around him. His expression changed once more and he rested his head on the palm of his right hand. His eyes were sharp as he started speaking. I know you are a traitorous spy who met with Zetsu in the Wave Country or somewhere within the island outside of the village. Do you deny that? Miyuki shook her head. She had examined Yoshino to see if he knew, but he hadn't revealed anything. It was not ignorance. He had merely said he had suspected her to be one. But taking Yoshino's word was dangerous. That man was a slithering snake. She had known. But then again, so was she. She had always believed that he was much more dangerous than the Emperor. Of course, he always denied it, saying she must not be fooled by how the Emperor behaves. I did meet Zetsu years ago. It was around the time this was just ruins. My village was one of those who left the ruins. Of course, we did return when it became unsafe outside. The world doesn't take much of liking to those who are different. And yet I have not seen anything different about you. Do you want to see? No, I am not interested. Miyuki was a little surprised by that. He didn't know and yet has no interest in knowing. Was that why he had allowed her to continue doing as she pleased even when he suspected her? This situation made her a little uncomfortable, thinking that perhaps he knew already. But naturally, his mask was unreadable. What is going to happen? I don't know. I don't really care that you are a spy. I don't hate people. But you are thinking that because you are Uzumaki, you leave this room, even though you admitted to being a spy. Am I wrong? No. But I can snap your neck just to prove a point. Miyuki knew when someone was serious, and the Emperor was serious about that. Still, he had said he didn't know what would happen to her. You have evil intentions towards me. It doesn't show in your eyes or face, but I know it is in your heart. You are one of those people who believe that I should have not led the clan to the direction it takes. You are most likely one of those rats the elders sent when they disagreed with me and believed I was leading the clan into the right path. You might also resent me for not taking action against Konoha and Kiri. For you personally, Kiri Shinobi killed your family and Konoha watched it all happen. Oh, they knew about the attack and could have stopped it, but they did not. Zetsu told you as much. And I never denied it. You don't wish any harm to the village. Not at all. You'd never permit such a thing. But people believe that I could bring ruin to the clan with my actions. Domination is usually through bloodshed. Although you know things about the clan, which you could give for Zetsu to bypass the security, you've not done so. But you've only ever been interested in knowing the location of the Sanbi. Zetsu knows I took it. Miyuki was silent for a moment before bursting out in laughter. It was a hollow laugh, devoid of any emotion. How do you think like that? You train your mind, Naruto said. Nobody knows the location of the Sanbi. I am the only one who knows. You can tell Zetsu that tomorrow when you visit the Wave Country. So, I am going to leave here. Of course. You are a precious Uzumaki woman. You are going to breed little Uzumaki for Yoshino. Your elders will be most pleased. Really, he was just going to say something like that to her face. Did this man not have any limits? She then smiled. Unfortunately, I cannot bear a child. Naruto smiled. You are smart, but you became emotional when I mentioned that you would do what you don't like. The only reason I'd keep you alive after being a spy is for the simple reason of increasing our numbers. If you become useless on that as you have been useless to Zetsu, there is no need to keep you alive, now is there? Of course, even to members of his clan, he could still think like that. Miyuki knew the Emperor for his logical way of thinking. She despised having uttered those words. They just gave her away. Naruto got up from his throne and then slowly walked towards Miyuki. He bent down slightly and stared into her face. Such a waste of a fine woman. What does Yoshino's grandfather want? He is part of the elders, and has been a staunch opposition of mine. The empire is growing, and before I decide whether the clan will have greater influence, I must know the intentions. What do you think he wants? Yoshino to be emperor. But as long as I am alive, that is not something that will happen. Yoshino will never betray me. Miyuki could not dispute that. She had observed, and the elders had realized it already. No matter what they said, Yoshino was never going to go against his emperor in any way. You care about politics, but that is a game you hardly play. The clan politics are deep, and I know both Karen and Yoshino hold more political power within the clan than you. I often find it bothersome since I tend to think of killing people I find useless. There is a different way of killing someone politically, but I don't think it is effective. Naruto said with a shrug. Does anyone wish for me to die? Most of the elders do, but you know that. Indeed. I know that once things settle, there will be politicking a lot. If I cannot be killed, I must be reduced to a puppet. Life is a traitorous bitch, isn't she? Depends. Of course, you'll say that. Naruto said with a smile. So, what do you want? Doesn't matter, I know I won't get it. You understand things quite well, and you know if I so please, I can confine the elders to this village and spread the Uzumaki around. Now, the only problem is Zetsu. He isn't going to kill you. You know nothing, you are useless. But do give him the message I gave you. Naruto said before placing the palm of his hand on Miyuki's forehead. The hand glowed slightly before Miyuki let loose a loud pained screech. Ah! She cried, holding her forehead before falling on the floor, twisting and turning. There were marks on her forehead, spreading across her face. Veins popped up around her head, the ones on her neck seemed as if they could burst. After a couple of minutes, she finally stopped, but did not get up. Her breathing was labored, both hands covering her head. I trust you'll be a good girl from now on. You won't be compelled to do anything, at least not for now, Naruto said before standing up straight. He then walked toward the exit without saying another word. Yoshino was standing just outside, hands folded across his chest. I think a part of her likes you, you can keep her. You never shared some of the things you shared with her. Naruto closed his eyes and started walking past Yoshino. When you invited her to your home, you knew I knew something and never asked. I decided it was best we keep our thoughts to ourselves to avoid any puddle that might cause us to slip. It is much more than what I actually thought. I could never get anything out of her, Yoshino said following the emperor. I did most of the talking, she merely confirmed some details. The emperor paused, glancing back at Yoshino for a moment. Did I not tell you sort out your elders? They are stubborn and won't listen. People will continue to call this the Uzumaki Empire, but it will officially be simply named, the Empire. Uzumaki will be out of it. I cannot have politics that will only cause me to stumble. You have no control over the elders. If you did, I'd let it continue. But you don't. Tell them, on my orders, they must never leave this village. However, I will alleviate your position. In due time, you shall be appointed as the emperor's left hand, with Haku being right. That means you will play around within the sound. Acceptable. Acceptable. Good. Anything else? Noroi confirmed that the clones that attacked Sasuke are the same that attacked Gurren. I am gonna go talk to her about it and see if I cannot squeeze more information out of her. I've already given you the go-ahead and you don't need my supervision. Do what you must. I want to see results. Naruto said. Yoshino had at least earned that much. Haku was the one who worried him because he was simply too kind, even to enemies. I am going to go above what the Empire does with a Wagaku when talking to her. I wish to know if you are okay with that. Naruto opened both his eyes. Yoshino was talking about allying Iwa and Azushio. It would need his approval to be the final thing. This was still a village he had rebuilt. He closed his eyes once more and then responded. It is fine. There are people within the water daimyo's palace who are questioning things. Mei made efforts with the daimyo and it worked. But there are people who are still talking. Some are even questioning our association with Nadeshiko and want to claim it for the water country. There was always something happening. This was the shinobi world. Greed ruled people. There was always the hunger for something. The thirst for something. Some people were never satisfied with what they had. Yoshino had known that he would always have to do things. Elimination or diplomatic. We don't have time for talking. We have bigger issues. Nadeshiko is important for our share in the control of the sea. With it and the wave, our shipping business thrives. The wave needs Nadeshiko. Until the capital grows and surpasses the wave, we must show extreme caution. Yoshino smiled. The right hand is for diplomatic missions and the left is the stick that hits them. Gurren has created a group she named Empire Black Ops, EMBO, for short. Only you, Haku and Noroi know of its existence. When you must carry out missions that require termination, talk to her. For now, we don't need a bloodbath. It will raise too many questions and May will turn to us. Have the daimyo purge the people we don't want in his council. I will call for Noroi. Tell me when it is done. Kisame grinned when he saw Naruto sitting below a tree, eyes closed, leaning against its trunk. He didn't seem to notice him, but he knew this was not a coincidence. The Emperor had been waiting for him. The Emperor was on the hunt. Madara didn't seem to care about this. He'd merely said the cage were going to gather, and if they declared war, the Bayou would gather. There was of course the likelihood that they would be hidden from him and taken away from battle. He already had in his possession 3 Bayou, and from what Zetsu told him, Madara was personally going to collect both the 6 and 7 tails. Both would be easy pickings, with the former secluded away from other people. The latter was just a stupid woman who wanted to make friends with everyone. Is it my turn? Kisame asked, still grinning. Naruto didn't offer an immediate response. He hardly had time to meditate these days with the duties he always had to deal with. After a minute, he opened his eyes and then responded in a quiet tone. Yes, I'm sure you've been itching for it for a long time. I wouldn't mind either having a bit of fun fighting against a man who is infamously called a Bayou without a tail. That was measured up by his large supply of chakra. Not to mention that glutton he carried on his back also gave him chakra. Kisame would no doubt be different from the others. Of course, Naruto would need to be careful with fighting him, given that the glutton will only consume his jutsu. He would have to make do with taijutsu and kenjutsu. Itachi always spoke about how dangerous you were. He honestly feared you for what you would become. He always knew you were strong, despite never having seen you in action. Compared to what other people saw, I'd say he saw the power you kept hidden. Kisame said. But I'm sure he'd be happy that some of his fears have not come true. Naruto raised an eyebrow. What fears? Kisame shrugged carelessly. I'm sure you know, since you were quick to have Sasuke kill him for you. You knew what he wanted, and once he was no longer useful, you pushed him to meet his end. I cannot take credit for that. Death in the hands of his brother was ultimately what he desired. Naruto said with a wave of his right hand. He slowly stood up. Seeing the blonde get up, Kisame lunged without warning. He didn't swing his sword, but as he neared the blonde, who didn't even seem to have taken notice of his movements, he swung his right hand, fist formed. As he touched down just a foot away from the Emperor, his fist drove toward the Emperor's head, just on the side. It wasn't that Naruto hadn't seen it. He was just prepared for it. He rose his left hand, almost in a lazy manner, but there was raw strength behind it. Kisame's punch collided with his hand, creating a slight shock, but Naruto didn't move, not even an inch. That's tough, Kisame said before jumping back. It felt like I just hit a rock. He smiled. When he looked at Naruto, his smile widened. Senjutsu, huh? I was told it gives you some incredible physical strength, but I didn't think it would be so much that I'd hurt just hitting you. Surely you jest, Naruto said calmly. Someone of your physical strength should not complain over something like that, especially when you did not try your best. Let me also try. No. He was gone in the blink of an eye. Only dust remained from where he once stood. Kisame didn't even need to see the Emperor. His reaction had simply been something of instinct. He quickly grabbed his sword and placed it in front of him in a defensive manner. Naruto's fist collided with the sword in a brutal manner. There was a loud sound when it connected with Samehada, who could not simply absorb the blow. The stretched scales did nothing to deter the blonde from attacking, and the breathing sword let out a small shriek as Kisame was forced to skid back slightly from the force of the punch. Speed and strength, who, Kisame wasn't allowed to finish talking as a powerful gust of wind slammed into him. The gust had enough power to send him flying backwards and crashing into a tree. It wasn't long until he recovered, but he was forced to drop down when Naruto's feet crashed in front of him, backing him against the tree. The blonde was swinging a sword with his right hand. The swing cleaved through the air, moving just above his left shoulder. When he dropped down to avoid it, the sword cleanly cut through the trunk of the tree. Kisame drove his sword towards Naruto's gut as the tree behind him started to fall. The sword never reached the blonde. Even when the scales were sharpened to deter any retaliatory attack, Naruto's left foot still stomped on the sword, slamming it into the ground with such forcefulness that its head got buried down. The Emperor then strengthened his muscles and used his left foot as balance while swinging his right foot towards Kisame's head. The former Kirinin raised his right hand toward his left side to block the kick. He winced slightly when it connected. Despite his strength, blocking an attack like that still stung. Naruto started, eyes staring down at Kisame. You pass for your physical strength. But do get serious or I will break you. He said that while holding a small ball of flames in the palm of his left arm. He intended to shove it towards Kisame's face. Kisame could feel the intense heat coming from the flames. It was not the sort of thing that would leave him without burns if it hit him. And the Emperor was not targeting the sword because he knew it would absorb it. It was very clever of him. But then again, it was something that Itachi would likely do. Suiten, water gun. Kisame blasted out a powerful stream of water from his mouth to counter the jutsu before it could even be launched toward his face. Naruto seemingly didn't try attacking but allowed the water jutsu to hit his. When water and fire collided, the flames became steam which rose quickly, obstructing their views. Kisame felt Naruto jump away from him, but before he could rise, he felt something strong get a hold of him. He frowned deeply when the steam cleared and found himself shackled by chakra chains. So, these are the infamous chakra chains capable of holding down even a Beiyu. Kisame said, trying to move. The chains did not budge, not even a little. Samehada was not touched and was free to move. Once more, he tried moving, but there was still nothing. He became frustrated in trying to break free. Curious little things, aren't they? Naruto said, holding out his sword with his left hand. He then pointed it toward Kisame, more specifically his right shoulder. Not really, but I must admit. They are tough to break. He still didn't sound too concerned. Are you gonna free me so we can actually fight? I don't know about allowing you to attack. Simply not giving you the chance to attack means that you don't get the chance to show me what you can do and giving me some trouble. I entered Sage mode right away because I wanted to dictate this. Why should I give away this advantage? Is it really fun like this? No, Naruto admitted. It is actually boring. Wind sword. Within a second, Kisame felt something piercing through his right shoulder. The invisible sword just cut through, without him even seeing anything. He just felt the pain and then saw blood gushing out. He smiled a bit warily. You are not going to torture me, are you? For what reason? When you hang around certain people, you pick up the tendencies. Kisame explained lightly. Naruto shrugged as he put away his sword. He held out both his hands and formed small Kaiten Raisingans. He then hurled the one on the left straight towards Kisame, but it missed him. It hit the trees behind and erupted into a huge column of flames just behind Kisame. The Akatsuki nin whistled. That's frightening. He could feel the flames lick the trees behind him. Why hadn't Samehada moved? Was the sword thinking of betraying him? It would be most unpleasant if the sword did something like that. Naruto dispelled his last jutsu, thinking he didn't want to incinerate Kisame and lose out on his bounty. He formed a Rasengan, and then started forming blades. The jutsu started spinning around, making a loud screeching sound. Kisame knew he could not survive being hit by that. Get up, you stupid sword. This will just kill you and keep your body intact. Naruto said before positioning himself to hurl the jutsu towards Kisame. He suddenly changed positions, twisting around, and as he did, the chains dispersed, freeing Kisame. Naruto hurled his jutsu towards the trees. The Raisin Shuriken slammed into the trees, expanding massively before exploding into a powerful blast. The trees became engulfed in the dome of chakra. Kisame didn't hesitate to take advantage of Naruto's situation. He grabbed his sword and lunged toward the Emperor. The Emperor had yet to turn to face him when he swung his sword with both hands while still just above ground. Kisame gritted his teeth when something pushed through him from behind. Chakra chains pierced through both his shoulders and knees before holding him suspended in the air. His sword never reached the Emperor as it too was held. He glanced behind through the corner of his eyes and saw a red-headed man standing there. You exposed yourself, Your Majesty, Noroi said, letting loose of a small breath of relief. He reacted far quicker than I thought. Zetsu, he has disappeared now, Naruto said with a frown. I can afford to do that since you were around, he then added while slowly turning around to look at Kisame who was floating above the ground, held by chakra chains. I'm contemplating on having him free you just so we can have an honest battle. Why don't we do that? This has not been a battle. I rigged this place to suit me, Naruto said. There is a large seal placed on the ground that slowly sucks away chakra that is not Uzumaki. Of course, it creates a perfect battleground that I cannot be beaten within. You should never allow an Uzumaki to fight in his preferred place if you don't have the dojutsu to spot the seals placed around. You say it as if you were going to give me a chance to do it right. Naruto looked thoughtful for a moment before shaking his head. Mayor, I do love to battle but I went to such lengths to actually avoid battling you. I never had any intentions of fighting you in the first place. But I must admit, I was using you as a practice for a battle against Madara. Of course, you are not him, so everything went well. Almost well. I had to spend energy. He then glanced at Noroi. Deal with it. I have to be somewhere. I'll allow you to leave this place before me. Of course, Your Majesty. Noroi disappeared in a flash after saying those words. After Noroi disappeared, Naruto slumped down to the ground, breathing a bit heavily. After a moment, he calmed his breathing. Nope. This won't do, he said. He'd lied about only the chakra of those not Uzumaki being absorbed. He was no different than anyone else. Of course, he took some measures to protect himself. If he was simply fighting using taijutsu and kenjutsu there would be no problem but he used ninjutsu and the moment he did that, the protection stopped helping him. Having his chakra absorbed was not much of a problem if he had senjutsu activated but the mental focus needed to keep everything in balance was a little too much. He needed another plan. Against Madara, he would get exposed easily. Nothing was ever easy, was it? The young child in him had thought that nothing would go wrong the moment he plotted to have Obito killed. Zetsu had never been a problem. Not until after Obito was killed and he started revealing his true colors. Naruto even wondered if the creature was indeed the will of Madara. How did Madara even come to achieve that? As a user of the Rinnegan, he could have used the creation of all things. Nothing was certain, it was all just a huge mountain that had to be climbed. When was the last time he'd actually had this kind of challenge? When dealing with the cage, it had never been the case. While he would still not want to face all of them, he still knew that it was easy to pick them apart if they ever showed signs of uniting against him. You could use more of my chakra and boost your power, Kurama suddenly stated in a measured tone. Naruto was silent for a couple of moments after hearing the voice of the Beiyu. They didn't usually talk. There wasn't much to talk about anyway. But still, for the Kyuubi to start talking to him now must mean his troubling thoughts about Madara must have come to the attention of the beast. Then again, there was no one else in this world who knew him better than the Kyuubi. They have been together since he was conceived inside his mother's womb. I am a proud shinobi who trained hard to do away with the dependency on your chakra as most Jinchuriki do. Perhaps it was also the fact that I didn't want to become a weapon. I more than anyone else know that none of the Beiyu can match your power, even in your current state. The Emperor said. Just because the Gyuki was the second in rank after the Kyuubi didn't mean that it could try to reach the Beiyu. No, there was a major power difference. It was baffling when he actually thought about it. It was no wonder that no one was able to capture the Kyuubi until after Madara came with his blessed eyes and then Hashirama came with his Mokuton. Current state. You only have half of your power. I'm considering summoning Kabuto to perform the reanimation jutsu to revive Minato so that we can get that other half from him. Knowing Madara's power, that would be best. At your level, you are no match for him. You'll need me in your battle against him. I have fought against those of the Sharingan and the Susanoo. It seems to be your primary concern that if he is to release it, you would not have any firepower to stop its attacks. Before that, you could probably go head to head with him, a battle of ninjutsu. Madara may have the Sharingan, but one thing you learned from that old man was understanding the fundamentals of chakra and learning how to break down jutsu. Your contempt for Madara reaches even me, Naruto answered as he appeared within the seal. He stood right in front of the freed Kyuubi, which had its head resting on its paws, those huge eyes staring at him with hatred. I would rather work with you and maybe your father if it leads me to victory against that Uchiha. Naruto had to smile. He hardly saw so much hatred in the eyes of someone. Perhaps if it not for years of meditation and dealing with anger issues, he would have the same look about so many things and people in this world. He had certainly suffered. Number 1 on the list, huh? He said, still smiling. I hear you, Kyuubi. And I will use your power. But you want it to be something that is done united, so we use the full extent of your power, yes. If you have the answers, why ask? If you have the breath to waste asking that question when you could have simply said, yes, why even bother? Naruto asked rhetorically. I've gotten a grasp of Mokuton, but it is still something that needs more practice in battle. Your power and the chakra I've taken from other Beiyu will be what I need to now learn to control. But before that, I will require to get your other half. I already have an unlimited supply of chakra from nature, I can dance with Madara all day. It is good that you have started the conversation because I would not have started it easily. I want to see that battle between Madara and Hashirama. I'll learn more about Mokuton that way and more about Madara that way. Kyuubi stared at Naruto. He said he wanted to see it, and it was in his mind. There wasn't anyone else who knew that battle as much as he did. He could understand the power Madara wielded because he had fought in that battle. But still, what a beast Hashirama was. Even though Madara had him, he'd still lost. But of course, Kurama didn't think that it would be the same with Naruto. The blonde primarily used his power for healing and surviving fatal wounds. Madara could stab Naruto through the chest, but if he was fast enough, he could still heal the blonde and he'd get up and fight again. If this is the only way that Madara can be defeated, and if we succeed and I get the chance to escape, I will take it. Naruto shrugged indifferently. My people will just capture you again. I might decide against showing you anything. Kurama threatened. You can, but I have ways to force the information out of you. You have a mind, that's why you can think, and Madara can manipulate you using the Sharingan. You know I am not that of a kind person that I would not resort to extreme measures to get what I want, the Emperor said in a cold tone. I am just a reasonable person, that is why I asked. Haku stared through the windows of the tower with an expressionless look on his face. The more days he spent in power, the more he realized that perhaps the responsibilities were a little more than what he could normally handle. Gurren usually handled some of the things he couldn't stomach, but he'd read the reports. He knew what Gurren was doing to people who threatened this country. He could stop it, but he didn't. He tried talking to some people, but not all listen. There was no time for indecision in his role. If he did that, people could lose their lives, and everything could be lost. The pressure was getting to him. And it would not get easy if he didn't accept the things that he had to do. He didn't want to lose himself or his kindness. He wanted to remain true to what he was, and still be able to do his job. Haku knew he had to accept certain things, it was part of the job. Perhaps he was able to live in ignorance within Uzumaki because Naruto would never allow any of the issues to come to him. He knew some things because he was close to Gurren. But now he had to oversee it. That is a rather scary look coming from you. Gurren commented in a light tone as she walked towards Haku. She stopped at his right hand and stared down at the streets. There were hundreds of people strolling through the streets. People were coming in. The city promised the good life, and who didn't want it? Haku glanced at Gurren for a moment before responding. I haven't been sleeping that much. Hellish nightmares about people that we must torment and your inability to change it. Or the fact that you may end up having to give orders such as those in the near future. Haku smiled. That shed some light in the situation, but it was not all of it. Yes, he said. Yoshino has always said that you were too kind. Some of the Uzumaki also disliked that part of you. Yoshino, of course, it was really hard to tell. He could criticize your inability to take decisive action and still say you should never change. Gurren said, shaking her head slightly. Yoshino was still someone she could never be comfortable with. He could be like Orochimaru at times. He has made that clear to me on a handful of occasions. But, there are things you cannot run away from. Naruto has always been protective of me, at least from having to deal with the cruel intentions. But here, I've been forced because if I didn't, he was going to come and do worse. Gurren shook her head. Even in such moments, Haku was still thinking about saving lives. She truly could not understand how he thought about things at times. This was the shinobi world and people killed each other. You won't have to deal with so much in the future. He is still protective of you. You know something that I don't know. Gurren smiled. Ah, I know something you don't know. That is a surprise. Haku shrugged it off. Intelligence people know secrets before Cage. This isn't a competition, is it? He managed a small smile. Because if it is, I can order Noroi to pass on information before he tells you or Naoki. Or even Yoshino for that matter. You can do that. Haku smiled. While standing here, I can do it. I am the Emperor's right hand after all. Well, damn. Gurren became silent, still staring at the streets. She saw some kids running around. Orphans. The orphans were many in this world. So many like Yukimaru. Some were abandoned by their mothers who simply could not stare at the face of the bastard who violated them, yet had no strength to kill a child they carried. The Emperor has created a system that allows you to play politics only and leave the other things for Yoshino and me. Haku smiled bitterly. You should know that politics is a dirty game by now. I'd always seen it within the Uzumaki clan, but I see it more clearly now. You can't even trust people in a game of politics, even if you might publicly say you trust them. It can be a game without bloodshed, but it can be a game that brings pain. Nagato thought hatred is what starts wars. It is true to some extent, but wars are started because humans are just violent creatures. At times, we can be no different than wild animals. You no longer believe in peace. Peace doesn't mean people can't be violent and can't get angry. There are people who hate me now, simply because they are evil people who care about money more than anything, and when I stop them from making profits, they become angry enough to think of seeing me removed from my position to get someone they can influence. Gurren frowned. She had been in that position before, so she knew. Did greedy business people care that this was the land of the Emperor? No, they tried to get rich here. They tried to be greedy even before the Emperor arrived. It was always business and everything was a transaction that had to have a return at the end of the day. Who are those people? I'm not telling you. I will solve it. You will get killed one day because of this. Haku didn't deny it. He could see it. But he wasn't alone. It made him smile. Well, I have you to watch my back when I do something stupid. Yuga was also around to ensure that nothing bad happened to him. These are not the major issues in any case. The Cage seemed to have agreed to another meeting. About how they go about it, I don't know. I won't be involved with it this time around. But the result of it could give me a major job afterwards. Why? If they decide to unite against Madara, I'll be forced to try to make things work to continue with the spirit. And some other nations who haven't spoken to us because they still don't understand our position amongst the Great Five will surely come to us now. And who has to handle it all? Me. Before any leader speaks to the Emperor, they speak to me. I'm the one who can deny or accept a request to see the Emperor. You've got a lot of power. If this was some world, you'd have a lot of enemies who'd want that power. The Uzumaki won't stay quiet about this, especially when this country becomes as rich as it can become. The more the empire grows, the more the Uzumaki become influential and their power grows. Though Yoshino is their leader, he seems to pretty much allow the elders of the clan to do they please. Well, it isn't like they come here and order the Emperor to do away with you. They've tried that before, at least not directly. You forget that these are the same people who tried to have Yoshino push Naruto out of the throne. Gurren shook her head. She thought of it with contempt. After everything, they'd still do that to him. He was not going to be their dear, was he? Moving here was to separate the throne from the Uzumaki clan. Yes, and it gives this place a chance to build a political muscle that isn't dominated by the Uzumaki. If the throne had stayed in Azu, the whirlpools would have become the capital, and that isn't a field that Naruto fully controls. People can move without his direction in that village. There isn't that shadow looming over him, Haku explained. In any case, that isn't the main reason I called you here. The Emperor's hunt for the Akatsuki members. No. Haku said with a slight shake of his head. He then turned away from the window and walked behind his desk. He sat down before speaking. It is rather the consequences of such actions that I want to talk to you about. And I need to put someone here so that I can work closer to Naruto in his compound. What consequences? We collected bounties, and have money. We want to pay off debts, but some people cannot be reached. Are they hiding purposefully? I'd like to think not, but Yugao appears to think so. I want you to try get him to see me, here. He opened a drawer on his left side and took out 3 scrolls. He placed the scrolls on the desk. Give each the scroll, and let them know that their presence is mandatory. And please don't do threats. It'd be bad if we build foundations on threats. That will be difficult to do. These people can be very stubborn and I am not known for being diplomatic. Gurren warned. I know that very well, but you still had to be diplomatic when you were running this country. I expect you to fully utilize the patience you learned during that time. The scroll has the required message to get him to appear before me. I will do the rest of the talking on how we go about things. Gurren thought about it for a long minute before nodding. It will be done. Why are we sitting here and not fighting the Akatsuki? Haku stared at Gurren for a long minute. She was capable and the extra hard training she received while at Izu had improved her skills. He was not worried about her facing S-rank shinobi, but that was still not their battle. He was not going to allow something when Naruto has said he would deal with it. They were doing things right now. He was not going to allow people to do as they pleased because they felt the Emperor would understand. Because the Emperor said he will deal with it, he has already delivered the bounties for 3 members and it is only 2 who are left now. Is there any reason for you to worry? Yes. He is the Emperor. There are certain things we should do and leave him to simply relax and think about how to take this empire in the next step forward. Haku raised an eyebrow. I understand what you are saying. But I cannot give you that order. No, I won't give you that order. You are to remain in this country for its protection. You'll only leave if I say so or Naruto tells you otherwise. Gurren gritted her teeth in frustration. Are you serious? You have known me long enough to know when I am joking and being serious. If you wanted to do this, you could have raised the issue with him when he said he was going to do it. Are you kidding me? On that day, he didn't seem like he was open to any suggestions. I have learned to read the mood. Still not happening, Haku said in a firm tone. You must understand that he has reasons for doing certain things in the manner he does them. Try to understand those reasons and all will be well. I also worry when he goes to battle. There is no guarantee that Madara won't attack him while he is out there. If he is caught unprepared, that is the end. For him at least. It should not mean the end of all things. We must stand up and play our roles. My point here is that, know your role and understand it well. You will not stray. And you won't go out of bounds. This was new. Haku was telling her to behave and keep in line. It sounded like she was being lectured. Haku had lectured her before, but it was about morals and some of her tastes. It had never been about her role within the empire. You're settling in well, it seems. Gurren commented. I will do what you have requested and provide a report in the coming days. I'll be waiting for it. And His Majesty mustn't be disturbed from doing his job by these kind of things. If you don't get it, I'll spell it out loud for you. Don't tell him. You are making it a habit of keeping things from him, but it becomes pointless since he will eventually find out. The point of keeping it away from him is to keep him from worrying. I will have Yugao prepare a report about this and send it to keep at a later date, simply to keep him informed. There are things we must do ourselves. And we don't always have to run to him. Konohagakure. Kakashi stood at the site of the memorial stones, standing before the stone of his late sensei. The man he had loved and come to see as a father. Minato had truly cared for him and provided time and effort. Despite his many duties, he'd taken his time. Their team had been nice and he'd certainly taught them as their sensei. It was always his duties that sometimes made him late. Perhaps Obito had come to resent their sensei for being always late to save his students. In the war, they'd often been left alone because he would be needed elsewhere. But in that moment, sensei had left the responsibility to him. He had been somehow that time. Perhaps had his attitude been different, his teammates would have been still alive. Of course, despite Minato's efforts for him, He had failed Naruto. He hadn't done anything for the blonde but had merely kept watch. The Sandaime hadn't barred him from doing anything. He always had an excuse. A reason for why he could not be there for the blonde. And now, he was no longer in Konoha. No doubt, had things been different, Naruto could have still been in this village and maybe their relationship would have been better. I thought I'd find you here, Jiraiya said as he walked toward Kakashi. He stopped by the silver-haired man's right side and stared at the name. He frowned deeply. He had failed Minato. He would have had a truly wonderful future, but that has failed. The bitter thing was that this was the result of his former student. He wondered if his apprentice had come to know about this before he died. Naruto hadn't said much about Obito or how he did it. Everyone else who saw anything that night was dead. The Sandaime hadn't seen anything either. Do you think Obito came here as Obito? Kakashi suddenly asked. Jiraiya shook his head. It is possible that he didn't do that. From what Naruto said, he was playing Madara's role. But we don't know how, only the Emperor has the answers. Which he chooses to keep to himself. Kakashi said. He only said what was necessary and needed to deal with the current situation. But we would still need to know more details for our piece. Jiraiya said. The difficult thing is that if he doesn't want to tell us something, he won't say anything. Jiraiya had first-hand experience with that. There were so many times Naruto had not given him answers he wanted. He'd not as much as refused to respond, but it was always something that kept you thinking. Can't force him, Kakashi said, but hopefully, when we meet, he will talk. This is of course a private matter and the others don't need to know. Jiraiya nodded in agreement and became silent. After a couple of moments, he spoke in a quiet tone. Do you still blame yourself? There was something that maybe had given him comfort, and it was that Obito had not seen him pierce through Rin's chest with his Chidori. But if Obito had turned, it meant that he saw. His friend had loved Rin dearly. Kakashi had known and Rin had cared for him as well. If Obito had turned because he saw, then his sensei had been killed because of him. He'd even thought Obito had died because of him. He had caused the deaths of all those close to him. He was a failure who failed to save all. He couldn't even save Naruto. What could he do about this village? Would he also fail? Did he still have the strength of carrying on knowing that it was his friend and because of his actions that friend turned on Konoha and caused the death of Konoha's greatest Hokage? Obito died while trying to save me and I was the one who killed Rin. While nothing was intentional, the fact is that they died because of me. And now with the knowledge that Obito survived, I have my fears. While it is difficult to think that Obito would attack the leaf, the fact is that he did. And it is likely that he saw Rin's death. My only promise to him had been that I would protect her, but I failed, Kakashi said in a quiet, sad tone. They were some miserable people, Jiraiya thought bitterly. Perhaps Kakashi took more on his shoulders because of the tragedies that fell on him. But he too has his regrets. Almost everyone had their regrets. But for them, it seemed that these regrets stopped them from seeing another day in peace and guilt-free. I'm not going to repeat what I have said, Jiraiya said in a stern tone. The question I will ask of you is whether these burdens will stop you from living or if you think you are not cut out to be Hokage anymore. Nobody will force you to stay. I know that, Kakashi said after a minute of silence. I'm not going to quit, but I wonder if I will ever be happy again. There was silence as Jiraiya could not offer a response. I hear the Emperor is hunting down members of the Akatsuki. Jiraiya nodded. He glanced at Kakashi before responding. Yes. He moved before we could even get their locations. His mobility does make things easy for him, but even I didn't expect him to move this quickly, Kakashi said. And actually just take them down. Perhaps he calculated that it would do well for him to be the one to eliminate them. He isn't trusted, but helping other nations by ridding of such criminals helps improves his image. It was all about getting something out of something with the Emperor. From the way things looked when he spoke to him and the Kazekage, it appeared that he didn't view the members of the Akatsuki as that much of a problem. It was evident with the way he was moving quickly. Well, unless he'd had this planned all along and was merely waiting for the right time. We can't complain, Kakashi said. He has 3 Beiyu with him. And they are only going to go after him. He wasn't doing anyone a favor but himself. It is perhaps why he has been doing this silently despite coming to agreement with us that he would cooperate. Jiraiya wasn't complaining either. What they had to deal with now was taking care of Madara. It was going to be an almost impossible task, but they still had to do it. Tsunade was suggesting that it be the Cage who have to face Madara, but with the way Naruto is doing things, he is just forcing a confrontation with Madara. The Toad Sage shook his head at the thought of the current Cage fighting against Madara. I really don't think the current Cage would be enough for Madara. No, it won't be enough. We need more powerful shinobi to actually stand a chance of defeating him. We will hear how the other Cage react to this. We have made an agreement to meet in a secret place and the Emperor's people will organize this. Kakashi answered. Kabuto had tried not to think too much about why the Emperor had summoned him all of the sudden. He'd been pulled out of his activities of keeping surveillance on Shin. Noroi had been the one to appear before him and hadn't given him the chance to say anything. When he appeared in the throne room, Kabuto realized that this was a new place and was much more intimidating than the throne room in Uzumaki. You certainly knew you stood before the Emperor. Perhaps Uzu changed moods because it was what you could, home, and a place where Naruto didn't need to constantly project strength. In here, a moment of weakness and other people would strike. It would not be a surprise if some daimyo were planning something against the Emperor due to his growing influence. I want you to do something for me, Kabuto. Naruto said in a hardened tone. I am at your service. I want you to gather what you can to reanimate Minato Namikaze. The Emperor threw a kunai, tagged with a scroll. You'll embed that on him. You can do that without any deviations, yes. Kabuto nodded, but he didn't respond immediately. He was wondering why Naruto would want to do something like that. Minato was his father, and as far as he was concerned, the Emperor didn't hate his father for making him a sacrifice. He probably reasoned the Yondaime Hokage had been reasonable to do what he did. He wanted to ask, but he shut his lips. He didn't want to seem like he was poking too much. Orochimaru tried that before and it failed. It is perhaps because he used a seal similar to the one the Sandaime Hokage to seal away my former master's hands. Kabuto responded calmly. Naruto stared for a moment before responding. And you didn't try? No, Kabuto said with a shake of his head. It isn't that I didn't want to do it. I wanted to do it when I was still running from you. But I figured it would be pointless to try something like that since all the masks in the Uzumaki temple were removed. It was not surprising that Kabuto knew about that. Orochimaru had known a little too much about this world. But the masks were the properties of the Uzumaki and they kept them locked away. He had them kept away and learned to use all of them. It was only natural for him to learn as an elder of the clan. I will handle that part. His soul is indeed trapped in the belly of the death god. So are the souls of the other Hokage. I am not saying you should summon all the Cage. I am saying the Yondaime Hokage and no one else. Naruto said in a hardened tone. We are clear, yes. Of course, your majesty. Good. You will get a sacrifice. I'm sure there are many worthless people moving around this world. No innocent person must be sacrificed. Naruto paused for a moment before speaking again. But admittedly, even an innocent person could be used as this is important than anything else. In any case, it would soothe Minato's soul a little if he knew that what was used was a worthless bandit who rapes and murders innocent women and children. I didn't think you'd be that kind. Kabuto said. Naruto blinked. Kindness. Had he just said that because of kindness? Ridiculous. Naoki will assist you in moving around to gather what you need. When I return from meeting the Cage, you must be done. It would not be a problem if he was going to have that mobility enabled to him by Naoki. Still, he would have someone watching over him. Then again, what did he have to worry about? Naoki was known for being mischievous. It was one of the reasons he was kicked out of the Emperor's guard. Karen hadn't complained much, but aside from hearing intel from him, she didn't entertain much from him. He still seemed to respect her in a way that did not mirror his respect for the Emperor. Kabuto was never going to allow his curiosity to get the best of him. It was best to let some things be. What of Shin? I'm less worried about him for the moment. His attack on Sasuke and your information has led me to believe that he isn't one we have to worry about, at least not now. But anything can happen. It would not be out of the picture to think that he could move in the battle with Madara to try to get a jump on us. The Emperor responded. We will be ready in any case. Focus on your task. Kabuto nodded. Do you mind if I ask? I have always been curious about something. You developed the jutsu that the Uzumaki use for teleportation. To make it simple, you created portals all around the shinobi world. Thus, anyone you show how can dive into the portals to be able to move freely. But I want to know if you can or cannot use the jutsu your father became famous for using. Naruto stared for a long minute before responding. What do you gain by getting an answer? My curiosity is merely satisfied. Kabuto said. I have no desire to satisfy your curiosity, the emperor said sternly. Any more questions? Unknown location. They may well have been brought here to be butchered, and maybe the emperor was working with Madara. It had truly taken much for Kurotsuki to actually even agree to allow that man from the empire to take her to a place she didn't know. The fact that she was being teleported to the location made her trust issues flare up. She had been basically walked into the place with blindfolds. The location had not been disclosed to none of the cage because they didn't want to get ambushed by Madara while holding their meeting. There appeared to be much that needed to be discussed. She had felt a little relieved when she arrived at meeting place and saw the other cage already seated, and chatting among themselves. She still could not tell where she was and had no sense of what was outside the dark chamber. The room was round in shape, with a round table with 6 chairs around it. At least she hadn't been led to a death chamber. This was indeed a meeting place. Kurotsuki settled down beside the Mizukage, who was the only person she could look at without getting angry. She then frowned when she realized that the emperor was on her right. He was just sitting there, with a look that clearly said he was somewhere far away from this room. Her body felt some tension with just being closer to the bastard. It should have been just cage here, but because he was the emperor and held most of the answers, he had to be here. They could not leave him out of any talks around the greater picture of the elemental nations. She stole a look at him for much longer than she would have liked. And was caught staring. She didn't look away. The emperor's sharp eyes just narrowed ever so slightly before he closed them and seemingly returned to his thoughts. This made her feel a bit angry that he was dismissing her existence so simply. As if she could sense that Kurotsuki was going to start something, Mei greeted the woman with a smile. It is good that you decided to join us, Tsuchikage Dono, the Mizukage said with a smile on her lips. The fact that I had to leave my security to this man aside, my participation in such meetings has been mandatory due to unresolved issues. Kurotsuki said bitterly. It didn't please her the least that she was forced to attend all meetings to avoid taking a step back in any agreements she has formed with Suna and Konoha. But there was nothing she could really do about it. I understand that the first part must have been challenging, but I had put my life at stake if something had happened to you. We had agreed with the other cage that this was the best convenient way to do things given our lack of time to make preparations. The emperor was willing to offer his assistance, Mei said. Kurotsuki knew that the meeting had not been the idea of the empire but that of both Suna and Konoha. The emperor was merely someone who was invited to it because of his knowledge of the issue that they had to deal with. She has had much to lose anyway by not coming here. If she hadn't come here and her Bayu were recovered, those who would recover them would choose to keep them. She could not have that. With everyone here, Gaara started in a serious tone. We should start with the discussions and return to our homes to make preparations. We don't know what is happening in our villages now. The village most likely to fall under attack is the Cloud. It still has the 8 tails. Kakashi said in thought before adding. Azushio could also be attacked. You do have 3 Bayu under your care, yes, your majesty. Naruto eyed Kakashi for a moment before responding. Indeed, Hokage-sama. At this very moment, my home could face another assault, and given the power of the opponent this time around, I am not sure that we would survive this one. I'll agree with the Kazekage that we ought to move with things quickly so we can all be free to look after our homes. The problem here is a former Konoha shinobi and a founder of the village. What does the Leaf have to say about that? We have had Leaf shinobi running loose and the Leaf has been unable to do anything about it. Kurotsuki said. She held back from saying that she was blaming Konoha for the attack on her Jinchuriki. Kakashi had expected someone to bring up something like that up. The Leaf has always had powerful shinobi running rampant after leaving the village. Kurotsuki was right to say that they have been unable to do anything. Perhaps saying, unable, wasn't the right term. They could have done something on both Itachi and Orochimaru's case, but they simply refused to put the resources to deal with those shinobi because of their power. And the failure to even go after Orochimaru resulted in the Sannin attacking the leaf with intentions to destroy it. It is indeed true that we have had some of our shinobi causing problems within the shinobi world. But we cannot be held responsible for what former shinobi do. Kurotsuki blinked. Is that all you can say? What do you expect me to say? Kakashi asked, staring back at the Yondaime Tsuchikage. Konoha isn't the only village with a missing nin that causes problems. Our shinobi perhaps cause the biggest problems because they are stronger. We still cannot take credit for their actions nevertheless. Naruto glanced at Kurotsuki for a moment before shaking his head. Did this woman even think before she opened her mouth? Maybe Madara was the bigger picture here, but pointing fingers only opened door for fingers to be pointed back at her. It was stupid of her to bring up something like that. He didn't think that she only brought it up on purpose so that she doesn't get blamed for what happened to Gaara. No, she was not that cunning. You'll probably say I have something against you, but I must remind you that your former shinobi, Deidara, took part in the mission that saw the Kazekage being taken by the Akatsuki. If Konoha has to say something about its former shinobi, you should also have something to say about that particular event, no? Kurotsuki glared at Naruto. She knew about that, but she didn't want to hear it from this person. What would be the fuss about it anyway? She lost 2 Jinchuriki and the Kazekage had only lost 1 and he was still alive. But, I am not interested in fake apologies or pointing fingers because it does not solve anything nor is it the reason we have gathered in this place. I did not leave my home to play childish games, you should consider that, Tsuchikage. Naruto added. He held back from telling her to grow up and stop being a child. It was not because he didn't want to offend her but because it would only take things further away from the agenda. I must agree with the Emperor. We came to talk about Madara, his plan and how we stop it from occurring. I think we can all agree that his kind of plan is something that threatens the lives and security of our homes. Darui said, trying hard not to look at Kurotsuki as he spoke. But to get to that, we need more information than we already have. Mei said, looking at Naruto. She wasn't happy that she hadn't been able to see him before this broke out. And he had also withheld this information from her. You are going to share the information with us, yes. If I was going to deny that request, I would not have bothered coming here. My throne offers me much more comfort than this chair. Naruto said. You could have selected a better chair, your people chose this place, Kakashi said. He said it as a joke. Naruto just glanced at the Hokage and did not respond. You already know that Madara plans to use a genjutsu to enslave everyone in this world, which cannot be broken. What I did not explain to you, was the why. Why would he plan to do something like that? Madara grew up in the warring times. The Uchiha and the Senju were always fighting non-stop. Madara grew disillusioned with this world over the years, even after forming Konoha with Hashirama. What he sought to create was a peaceful world without wars, the perfect world where every childish dream can come true. His answer came in the form of infinite Tsukiyomi. Since he deemed that the shinobi world cannot change, he thought that if people were trapped within this genjutsu, there would be no more wars. Having looked at it, it is possible to have your dreams come true. But that fact remains that this is still just a genjutsu, a dream. And the dangers before this are that humans could be potentially wiped out in due time. What do you mean by that? Mei asked with a small frown. People must eat, drink and move to stay active. Our bodies are not eternal and will eventually give out. For civilization to continue, women give birth. If all people are trapped in the genjutsu, there won't be reproduction, and nothing will be sustaining our bodies. We will eventually wither and die away. There was silence as the cage absorbed the information. Naruto was glad that they were thinking deeply about this. He didn't want the cage asking questions he didn't want to answer. It was best that he was allowed and given the space to dictate what they talked about by speaking first before they questioned him. Now they could focus on what he had just said and the way forward rather than asking him questions. Before that happens, we also know that if all Beiyu are gathered by someone who can control all of them, we could also face a disastrous situation. Gaara was the first to speak. Kakashi nodded in agreement. From what the Emperor said before, for this to happen, Madara must revive the Jubi. And for that to happen, all Beiyu must be gathered. They are currently in that stage of gathering the Beiyu and have already gathered some of them. Azushio has been effective against Beiyu, would the Empire not be able to handle them? Darui asked. With their chakra chains, they could make the threat non-existent. Naruto wondered if he should say, but saying this made sure that they kept the situation in the serious light that it deserved. Against Beiyu, yes, we can render their power useless. But not against the Jubi. I'm afraid there would nothing we could do against it. This reaffirms that this is indeed a serious matter. Gaara said. But I still have a question around the Jubi. You say that it must be revived. This means that it existed before. Naruto nodded. History was not available to all, but it was all right. Certain things didn't need to be known by all people. Besides, what happened during the days of the Sage of Six Paths was something that happened long ago. Kabuto had called the sage a god. Perhaps he was right about that. Naruto could not even begin to imagine the kind of power that the founder wielded. Before there were 9 Beiyu that we know today, there was the Jubi. I don't know the details around it. But I know that the Jubi existed long before even the Sage of Six Paths but was released during his time. It nearly destroyed this world before the sage sealed it within himself, and thus became the first Jinchuriki. The thing that you saw, Kazekage, that was used to seal Shukaku, that is the husk of the Jubi. The Sage of Six Paths used an ability called Creation of All Things to separate the Jubi into 9 separate beings, the Beiyu. It is safe to say he was the Bijuyu's father, and sent them through different locations to be different from the Jubi. Madara intends to revive that monster into this world. You know awfully a lot about the history. Kakashi commented, a bit dryly. Naruto shrugged. If you concern yourself with finding out how things started, you will try. It is only those who are connected with Beiyu that can understand that Beiyu are intelligent beings, not the mindless beasts of chakra you all seem to think, the Emperor said. He spoke again before anyone could comment on what he'd just said. The bigger question now is, what are you planning to do about this? Just how strong is Madara? I think I'm strong enough to beat all of you even if you come to me all at once. And I'm certain that I alone cannot win the battle against him. Kurotsuki couldn't hold back a bitter laugh after the Emperor spoke. That is rather something for you to admit, that someone is stronger than you and you cannot win. I've never been afraid of the truth, the Emperor said. There is no time to be arrogant and bask in pride. If we handle this incorrectly, it becomes the end of all of us. I did not fight to build my empire to see it crumble within seconds. Are you saying there is a chance if we all combine to fight him? A chance? Yes, there is. No, they would probably not make any difference. The cage in this room did not have that power. Naruto was certain that they wouldn't do well in a battle with Madara. For him to disable all of them, it wouldn't take too long. The generation of the Sandaime was the one that had powerful cage, and the Yondaimes was also strong if you count Minato, Ai, and Yagura. But this generation of Jonin-level shinobi were simply children for the Uchiha. I don't think you are being honest, Mei said to Naruto. What does it change? The Emperor asked. Just because I say there isn't a chance doesn't mean you are simply going to fold, are you? The fact is that we will need to fight. Fights aren't simply won by pure strength only. If we can work together, we can do something. But of course, we don't know if we will even have that chance. The cage can fight, even if it means risking our lives. Gaara said. He wasn't going to take anyone else from his village to the battle, if there was a need. Konoha will provide the Sannin to fight, I won't take part in the battle. Sasuke Uchiha will also fight in that battle. Kakashi said. But this is simply dependent on whether we can make Madara face us all. Can you make it happen? Gaara asked Naruto. Yes, Naruto said. Konoha is pulling out all stops to make this happen. It is necessary, Kakashi said with a slight shake of his head. Sasuke has the same eyes as Madara. He can be a valuable asset in the battle. Jiraiya-sama will also offer much needed assault. If anything happens and anyone gets wounded, Tsunade-sama will be offering medical assistance. That means she won't engage head-on, unless necessary. Her fighting style is taijutsu, and the Emperor is rumored to have enough physical strength to lift a Beiyu with just one hand. So, there won't be a need for her in the battle. I can testify to that, Kurotsuki said. She was bitter about it though. It seems that our survival will weigh heavily on your contributions. She felt sick just saying those words, but what else could she say? They needed his power to stay alive in this dangerous situation. And if he died in the battle, that would be a bonus. But of course, she knew, that would only make him a hero. But she could live with it knowing he is dead. Naruto looked at Kurotsuki with amusement. Was it necessary to even hide her contempt? It was not like he was going to say anything to her about it. He was not that overly concerned with such small matters. Aside from entering the battle yourself, is your Rinnegan user, the leader of a megacorps, going to enter the battlefield? He is just as destructive as you are. We saw that during the war. Darui said, staring at the Emperor. Naruto considered his options before offering a response. I have 2 other Beiyu that I must protect, and while fighting Madara, I cannot protect them. Someone needs to protect the Sound and Azushio. Nagato will be protecting these nations to ensure that while we are battling, no one moves to take the Beiyu. Naruto was conscious to the fact that if he said something else, like Nagato was dead or that he no longer had the Rinnegan, it would open the door for questions. He wasn't planning on going there. Madara's body he would keep as a trophy. If Konoha demanded it, they could have the rest of his body, but he would take the head. The Rinnegan would be taken to his possession. Or he could just say he incinerated it to avoid giving him the corpse. That is, of course, if they managed to win. Kakashi wanted to ask if Jiraiya had been fed false information about the death of Nagato, but he didn't say anything, assuming the Emperor had his reasons and he didn't want to expose anything before other Kage. Tell me you have found the 2 tails. Madara said to Zetsu. You still have not found the location of the Sanbi as of yet. It was frustrating that he could not get the answers he wanted. The Emperor had made watertight defenses that made it impossible for him to locate anything, and some things he kept for himself. She has moved out of Azushio, and the only person who knows her location and that of the Sanbi is the Emperor. Zetsu replied. We should move against him. The fact that he defeated the others without struggle means he will probably excite me in battle. But he stands in the way of 3 Beiyu. And if he is gone, the elemental nations won't have the spine to do anything. Madara said. That would be disappointing. But, the current generation of Kage are disappointing. Everything else went smoothly after that. No one was blaming the other for anything. Naruto entertained them, but he knew, he was likely just going to use them as tests to see Madara's strength. If the likes of Kurotsuki were hoping he'd kick the bucket in the battle, they would be disappointed because Naruto had no intentions of dying. Hell, he'd even tactically retreat to fight another day if plans were not coming along. But if someone like Kurotsuki was dying, he would not bother to save her. Of course, this still depended on whether they would even get a chance to stand before the infamous Uchiha. Where is this place actually? Darui asked, as they all rose, ready to leave. He was only realizing it now that there was no actual door at this place. Sky Country. Naruto simply said. You will return home in the same way you came. After then, I am no longer responsible for what happens to any of you. After saying that, he walked to May and then whispered in her right ear. I'll see you tomorrow. There is a situation I must handle at home after this. It might keep me. As long as you show up. You do have answers to give. May said. She then smiled slyly. But if you finish early, even if it is in the middle of the night, you can come, my window will be open. Naruto smiled. As long as you don't have anything covering you at that time, I won't mind coming in through the window, and since I am twisted, I might not even wake you up. I'd boil you if I caught you atop of me while sleeping. May threatened with a pleasant smile. You'll be feeling too good to even think that, Naruto said. You'll only be thinking, spank me. May laughed. She quickly gathered herself when she saw the other eyes staring at them. She'd quickly forgotten that the other Kage was still around. Their relationship was not a secret anyway. She had discussed it with them before. No, she'd informed them. Kakashi cleared his throat. Can I speak to you, privately, Your Majesty? Naruto stepped away from May and turned to Kakashi. He knew what the Jonin wanted to talk about. It was going to be a bothersome task, but he needed an excuse to get into the hidden leaf. He nodded and created 4 clones. They took away the Kage, leaving him with just Kakashi. He didn't want to speak here, and so, he grabbed Kakashi by his shoulder and they disappeared in a flash. Kakashi felt a breeze wash over him. He blinked and looked at the familiar setting of the streets of the Hidden Leaf, from the Hokage Monument. It was still just 5 faces. His face had yet to be crafted as his succession had yet to be made official, but everything else was done. Obito did attack this village years ago, but my father did not know it was him. By then, Obito had abandoned his name and was operating under the name of Madara. He didn't die when you thought he did. He survived but would have died if not for Madara. Did he see you kill Rin? Yes, but he never blamed you for it. Perhaps he still saw you as his friend, that's why he never came to retrieve his Sharingan. Had he done so, maybe we would not have succeeded in killing him. Naruto stated. That is all I am willing to say to you. Just answer me this, was he still Obito? Naruto stared at Kakashi's pleading face. He smiled. You want me to give you closure, but when this village tormented me, you just stood aside. You were my father's favorite, but not once did you appear before me to help me. Not when shop owners kicked me out of their shops, not when I was overcharged. Kakashi could not offer a response. When you can face me with an answer, I will also offer you the truth about Obito. The Emperor then stepped away from Kakashi before jumping down. He vanished into thin air before he could hit the ground. Sound capital. Minato looked at the unfamiliar surroundings with his blue eyes. He knew he had been revived using the forbidden jutsu developed by the Nadaime. And, someone was controlling his movements. This was a throne room. He hadn't been here before. It made him worried that someone could revive him like this. If they got his soul from where it was sealed, it meant that they knew about the Uzumaki techniques. What could be the reason for anyone to revive him? He hoped it had nothing to do with attacking Konoha. He would bleed out if he had to attack the hidden leaf. His eyes moved toward the throne. Sharp blue eyes stared back at him. The whisker marks were barely visible, but they were there. The hair was wild, but it was the blonde that colored his hair as well. He was much older. But no doubt, that was his son. That was Naruto. How many years have passed? Minato shook his head and then smiled. Did it matter? He was standing before his son. The son he'd left with a huge burden after the unthinkable had occurred. Hello Naruto. Minato greeted pleasantly. Father. Naruto nodded. I am usually called the Emperor here, but let us skip those formalities. I'd always wondered how I'd feel if you stood before me. I must say, it is rather strange. I am happy. I feel glad to be able to see you alive and well. I wish the circumstances were different, but nothing I can do about that. Minato said. The fact that he was here meant that Naruto had sacrificed someone. And not to mention those were not the eyes of an innocent person. Those were the eyes of a man who has seen much. A war-hardened shinobi who has killed many people. Emperor. That means you are no longer of Konoha. Minato did not express his emotions over this. Even when Naruto confirmed it. He merely said, I see. Of course you see, you've pretty much worked out the larger picture as to why I am not with Konoha anymore. It is not difficult to make assumptions. I had known that things would be difficult for you when I decided to seal the QB inside of you. But what I did not plan on was your mother dying. It had already been too late to stop anything when it became obvious she'd die. Naruto waved his right hand dismissively. I know what happened during that night. I don't need you to explain it to me. I looked at things objectively, and I don't think I have misread any fact into the order of things. Then it had truly been difficult for Naruto. But how difficult had it been that he would end up leaving Konoha? Since he was calling himself emperor, it probably meant he hadn't joined in any of the great nations, which of course was a great thing, but still nevertheless something he'd never foreseen. Then this is not a reunion and you want something. But since you already know what happened that night and are not looking at me with contempt, I can say that you are looking for the other half of the QB. Minato said. And that worried him a little. Did it mean that Naruto had an opponent that powerful, or did it mean that he wanted more power because he had become an enemy of the great nations? That is indeed what I want. And no matter my reasons, you are not going to fight me, are you? Naruto smiled. Of course not. But in any case, the situation you feared when you decided to turn me into a Jinchuriki has happened. Not the way you thought, but the masked man's threat has turned out to be much greater. It has led to the revival of Madara, and I need that other half of QB to fight him. That was bad. Not Madara. The man was ridiculously powerful. No matter how powerful he was, Minato could never do anything to the Uchiha. But at least his fears had been confirmed, and because of the plan he made, Naruto was standing firm. What of the cage? Assuming that they are still there and you have not become emperor of the great nations. I must admit, I did consider that, but I realized that such a thing would not last long and would only engulf this world in more bloodshed. Naruto said, "Will you do the honors?" Minato placed his hand on his belly before asking, "Can you first explain things to me?" Naruto tilted his head to the side before resting it on the palm of his right hand. He was silent for a couple of moments before responding. "I understand what you want me to explain, no, more like give you a background of things because I don't believe I owe you an explanation of anything. But what purpose would that serve? Perhaps nothing in your view, but I am still your father. I want to know if I have ruined your life or if you have done something in your life that makes me feel proud. If you had resealed the Kyuubi within Mother, she would have become a target of the Akatsuki and I would not have had the power to defend myself. Mother's seal was never made for her to be able to utilize the Kyuubi's chakra. Either way, you would have likely died that night, so you could have done nothing in the future, not unless Mother sealed the Kyuubi herself. But we cannot deny that being a Jinchuriki ruined my childhood. So, you did screw me over by making me a Jinchuriki. My life was treacherously miserable. But I cannot hate you because I have also made sacrifices for the sake of what I love." He paused for a moment before standing up. He walked toward the silent yellow flash, and then past him. "If you want to see what I have done despite being screwed over by the Hidden Leaf's people, follow me." "You are angry." Naruto stopped and faced this father with a raised brow. "You can tell." "Instincts," Minato said. He smiled sadly. "Would tell me first how your childhood was like. At least I want to tell your mother the truth when I meet her in the afterlife. She will probably punch me for doing what I did and knowing how you suffered. If you left, it must have been miserable. Demon, Kyuubi, demon brat. I had no friends. Parents told their children to stay away from me. Those I tried to befriend betrayed me. They made fun of me. There were nights I spent crawled up in a corner, thinking of a father and mother who abandoned me. There were sleepless nights, haunted by the glares of the villages. There were days, I asked myself, what did I do? What have I done? Did my parents abandon me as the village has? Did they hate me too? I had no reason to smile. No one. Not one. Nothing made me smile. The streets were filled with people who glared at me with contempt. People who wanted me to leave the village. Yet, I didn't know why. I didn't know a damn thing. I just knew demon. Kyuubi brat. Maybe a certain part of me did come to start believing I was a demon." Naruto wore a miserable look. "Konoha made me suffer. I cannot forget what those people did to me. I've always told people I hate nothing, but I truly do resent Konoha. There are times I think of showing them the monster they called me. For as long as I live, I will remind these people of what they did, until they crawl, beg for my forgiveness. I will never ally with them. You know, father, the thing that saved me from insanity was knowing that my mother did not abandon me but had died and that she was Kushina Uzumaki. But what always got to me when I came to find out that you were my father was that they hailed you and felt contempt for me." Minato remained rooted to his position. To think that the son he'd been so excited to have, the child he cherished when he was still inside his mother's womb, had been forced to face that. That was a cruel fate, much more than what he had expected. I can understand with the Sandaime, but of Kakashi and Jiraiya sensei. Minato shook his head. I shouldn't have died in the first place. Jiraiya. Naruto laughed, a truly hollow laugh. He was never around. And Kakashi didn't do anything either. Jiraiya is not my godfather. My life would have been happier, had he taken me away from the village to shield me. I did go out with him, to try to see if being a traveler would have been nice, and you know what, father? I really did enjoy it. I learned about the world, people. I met people who were kind, people who were cruel, but it was a little fun. Minato held out his right hand. This body could not feel anything. But he just wanted to hug his son. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.